So I read a story prepping for this week's message about a woman, this was in the 1700s, I think 17. She had a son who really went off the deep end, really started living away from God, not how she had raised him at all. And so she began to pray every single day for God to turn his heart back. And she prayed all the time. At that time, she washed clothes. So she would stand in front of a big tub and she would just wash clothes all day long. And while she was washing, she was praying and praying and praying. And the part of the story that caught my attention is she said she never lost hope. Never lost hope. And hope is the anticipation of good. That's what hope is. So she was washing and praying for her son, and she prayed for the rest of her life, and she died. And after her death, her son almost died, and he cried out to God, and God spared his life, and he became a disciple of Jesus for the rest of his days. His whole life was so completely changed that he actually wrote a song about the experience. It's a song that we literally just sang in our church. His name was John Newton, and the song was Amazing Grace, that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, and now I'm found. I was blind, but now I see. The part, like I said, of the story, though, that really got my attention was the part where she never lost hope. Have you ever lost hope about something you were praying about? You ever had a calendar year when you got to the end of the year and that year ended, you were like, thank goodness that year is over, right? 2026 is shaping up to be one of those years for me. Thankfully, they're not an every year occurrence, but here's what the year has brought me so far. Some of my grown kids are going through some really, really difficult experiences, and every parent knows that your greatest joy in life comes when they're doing well. And when they're struggling or hurting or, man, that is really hard on you as a dad or a mom because you love them. I've talked very openly about my mom and her struggle with Alzheimer's. I got to spend a few days with her just this week, and as that just whittles away at who she is, that's super hard. I've this year faced some really difficult work situations. I can't talk about what's been happening, but one of the things which is public knowledge, because it was all over Facebook, was we just went through a whole round of layoffs, and I literally didn't know if I'd have a job. So made it through that round of layoffs, but that affects the company, and that's just a small part of what I've been dealing with at work. And it's been big. And we found out earlier this year that one of our granddaughters, who's 3.5, has leukemia. And so she started her cancer treatments earlier this year, and we've been watching her progress through that, and that is incredibly hard. And then there's something else even bigger that I'm just not ready to talk about yet. And so this is my year so far. And there was a point this year where, not that long ago, I really realized I was living without any hope. Hope is, remember, the anticipation of good? I had no anticipation of good. I had anticipation of more bad. And it just stacked up so high that all of a sudden, I wasn't like I sat down one day and said, I think I'll lose hope today. It just went, and I didn't notice that it was leaving until all of a sudden I became aware of it. Now, that's a problem, right? That's a problem. But the reality is, you ever lost hope? You ever lost the idea? Remember, hope is the anticipation of good. Have you ever been in a spot where you were no longer anticipating good? Ever stopped praying about something because you just did not think God was ready or willing to answer? Ever tried to just fix something yourself? Take matters into your own hands and solve it yourself, and been very, very frustrated by your inability to do that? Common things, right? So we're in this series that we started last week called The God Who Hears. It's a series on prayer. And what I want to show you today is how to pray when you've lost hope. So I want to ask you to open up your program and take out the notes you'll find. Grab a pen. This will be some really important information. By the way, I have changed this message so much. So a lot of the sentences and verses are going to be a little different, and that's just how it goes sometimes. So this is really a story of lost hope and hope restored, and I want to show you what God has done. So welcome, of course, those you're watching online. So glad that you've decided to watch this with us. You can get our notes always at PennyelChurchLife.com. So here we go. So we're only going to get through part of it today. We'll do the other part next week. The first thing is you have to identify the outcome or outcomes you are trying to control. What are the outcomes? For me, it was many, not just one or two. What are the outcomes that you are trying to control? That's what you got to think about. You ever been bowling? You ever been bowling with somebody who, after they throw the ball, they do like this kind of stuff on the line, right? What are they trying to do? Control the ball, right? Does it work? No, of course not, right? I'm a bad bowler. I know, because it doesn't work at all, right? But that's what we look like to God all the time. We're trying to control something that literally isn't even in our hands. And personality-wise, it looks differently depending on your personality, right? I tried to capture some of the ways in which different personalities try and control the things that are happening in their life. Some people are like, if I can just be right all the time, then things will work out, and I'm going to be right. And so they really, really, really work hard to be right all the time. Some people think if I can just anticipate every threat, then I'll be okay. And they really always have their radar up and they're trying to anticipate every threat, and that if I can just understand them and control them, I'll be all right. Some people think if I can just know enough and learn enough, then I'll be safe. Some people think if I can just keep all my options open, that'll help me avoid pain. Other people are like, if I can just avoid all conflict, then life will be manageable. Do you know any conflict avoiders in your life? It's like, I'm going to avoid all conflict. Then life will be okay. Mine is this last one. If I can just get all these things to happen, then. And so I'm like, I'll do this, and I'll do this, and I'll do this, and then all God has to do is come along and make all my plans work out, and this will be fine. And all of these are attempts to control. We've thrown, we're those bowlers on the stage, going on the lane, trying to make the ball go where we want. And we do that because this is our reality. We're all kings. It is super important that you understand this spiritual theological truth, that you are a king. Your kingdom extends to as far as your will gets things done. So for instance, in my kingdom right now, if I wanted to, I could walk back, pick up a brownie, and eat it while I talk to you, right? That's in my kingdom. Can I make you eat a brownie? No, I can't. If you don't want a brownie and I bring it to you, are you going to eat it? I can try and, yeah, for those of you who want it, yeah. Some of you are like, I want a second, so, right? But if you don't want one, I can't make you do it, can I? But we try all the time. And then the result of that is, this is what we look like. There is stress and fear and anxiety and failure and uncertainty and this tremendous feeling that we've lost control. Because the reality is, our kingdom, the part that responds to our will, is incredibly small. Most of what we experience in this world is outside of our kingdom. They don't have to do it. They don't have to do anything. And so we're not in charge of most things. So this is what I've looked like for months this year. That's what I've looked like. Stressed, anxious, scared. You know what fear is? Fear is the anticipation of harm. And that's what I've looked like. So what are the outcomes you are trying to control? So 3 things, and these of everything I'm going to show you today and next week, this is exactly what I've done, and I'll show you how it fits together. First, you've got to identify and answer this question: what am I trying to control today? What am I trying to control? You have to answer that one. Because some of you are making yourself sick trying to control something that's not in your control. And it's so many times, right? Especially with other people. How many times do we try and control other people, like the decisions they're going to make? Right? If you have adult children, you know the pain of this. Well, teenagers, try that one. Try young children, try a toddler. Doesn't matter what age, right? Lots and lots of challenges with their decisions, other people's opinions. You ever try and get someone to like you or think highly of you or respect you or want you on their team? You can't control that. Their emotions, future events, lots of work stuff, like whether you get a job. Can you control that? If you send a resume off today, can you control whether you get even an interview? Can you control whether you get a job? So many things are beyond our control. Any outcome that you may want. And so the question is, what outcomes are you trying to control today? So you're sitting on your throne, you have a throne, you are a king. There is an area where what you want done is done. But most things are outside of that. So what outcomes are you trying to control? And here's the key question, where are you feeling anxious? Where are you feeling scared or upset? Those are almost always sure signs that you're trying to control something beyond your ability to control it. None of those things are what Jesus promised us. None of those things. They're what many, many Christians live with every day. But he never said, I've come so that you may have anxiety. So now here's one that really was challenging for me to ask myself next. Why do you want this outcome so badly? I have no idea what you'll discover when you ask that question, but that was a big one for me. I discovered things about motives inside of me that I did not know. So, not going to belabor it. You got to do it on your own. There's some things I learned. I'm sure I will put them in a sermon someday, but not today. But here's the other one that was really profound. It's so interesting how God put all of these pieces together in my life over the last few months. What outcomes have I attached my peace to? What outcomes have I attached my peace to? This is really key. Another way to think about this is this. I can't be happy until what? Until what? Until they change? Until your boss changes? Until this problem changes? Until your financial situation changes? What is it you think you can't be happy until? That's what you got to think about. And then, I don't know how I came up with all this. This one was another profound question. Do I want this answer from God more than I want God? Do I want this answer from God more than I want God? And the honest answer for me was, yes, I did. Okay, if you answer yes, you're in big trouble. Because you've elevated something above God in value, and then the whole thing falls apart. That's your kingdom. So whenever I want something, anything in my life, more than I want God, then fear is always the outcome. Always, because you can lose it. You can't lose God. But anything else that goes in the spot, you've put something in the spot where God alone belongs, and fear will always be the outcome. And then you start using God. So prayer becomes me telling God what he has to give me in order for me to be happy and peaceful in this world. I start using God. And then the saddest part of this, we lose all access to his character, and his power. This is the promise. His promise is that I will fill you with my character, with love, joy, peace. That's his character. Patience, kindness, goodness. And that the power that raised Christ from the dead is now aimed at you who believe. And once you have something in the spot that you want more than God, all of this is gone. You will not know it. You will not see it. And God, here's what I've seen God do in my life, okay? So I don't know if this is true for you. You decide. In my life, when I've done this wrong, God will just continue to stack a little bit more and then a little bit more and then a little bit more on top of me because he hates me, right? That's what we think. In those times when the pain is stacking up and getting really, really high, we're tempted to think it is a sign of his not love for me. Oh no. The opposite is true. He's doing that because he loves me, and he wants one thing. He wants me to get to the end of my rope. Last year I quoted Dallas Willard, and I said, do you know where God's address is? This is directly from Dallas. God's address is always at the end of your rope. That's where his address is. We know that from the New Testament. Paul wrote about this situation to the Corinthian church. In 2 Corinthians chapter 1, he said, they were under so much pressure, they thought they were going to die. You ever felt that way? You ever felt like you wanted to die? Because life was hurting so bad. And then he said, here's what God did. In fact, we expected to die. But as a result, we stopped relying on ourselves and learned to rely on God who raises the dead. And he did rescue us from mortal danger, and he will rescue us again. And we have placed our confidence in him. So, where's God's address? Always at the end of your rope. Always. By the way, that's one of the changes I made. That verse is not on your notes. If you want to look that up, it is a great verse. 2 Corinthians, and I spelt Corinthians wrong, so chapter 1, verses 9 through 10. Look at this. First, we stopped relying on ourselves. It's the number one thing that has to happen for you to experience God in your life. Stop relying on yourself. And some of you are just as stubborn as I am. You just rely on yourself for everything. Problem comes up, you solve it. Problem comes up, you solve it. Problem comes up, you solve it. How's that working for you? It's like you are on your throne and you're not getting off. Stop relying on yourself. Then look what he says next. Learn to rely on God. And by the way, I love that word, learn. You know who wrote this, right? The Apostle Paul. So literally, at this point in Paul's spiritual life, he was still learning big lessons. That makes me feel a little better about myself because I've been following Jesus since 1984, and I've had to relearn and relearn and relearn. And I read this week, and I'm like, oh, thank God. Even Paul has to keep relearning. It's like, all right, I feel a little better about myself. But then and then I love this. We have placed our confidence in him. You know what that confidence is? That's faith. Faith is confidence. So now we have confidence in God, and this is what God does. So, again, I have had to learn and relearn this in my life. 1995 was the very first time I learned this. It was an experience that I didn't talk about for 20 years because I was so afraid that when people heard the story, they would think I was crazy or making it up or something like that. So it was an experience that I just never talked about. But it was 1995, and I was a stubborn young man. And so God had to pile on so much stuff to bring me to the end of myself, where I finally acknowledged I'm not in control. It stacked so high it was ridiculous. And finally, one night it all fell apart, and I was alone, and I was mad at God. And I literally was crying out in prayer to him, and I said, part of what I said to him that night was, why have you allowed this to happen? Why have I lost control? And in that moment, I had an encounter with the living God. So the only way to describe it is like my mind turned like it was completely black, like a black screen. And in my mind, I saw a picture of a body on the ground with no bones in it. And instantly in my mind, I heard these words, "This is you without me. Control is an illusion. You never had control." And it was a profound reshaping moment in my life spiritually. Something that I had to have happen. What are you trying to control that you have no control over? What are you trying to control? You should lose hope about that, by the way. That's okay to get hopeless about that, because you're not the king. There is a king. Once you identify that, then you learn to surrender that outcome to God. So I'm going to identify where am I trying to play the role of God in this world, because I'm not God. And then I learn how to surrender the outcome to God. Jesus talks so much about this. One of my favorite verses. So, have you ever read the Sermon on the Mount? If you read Matthew, when you get to chapter 5, here's what it says. Large crowds were gathering around, and so he sat down, and he began, it says, to talk to his disciples. I'm sure the crowd was listening too, but I think that's important. He was talking to his disciples, people who had already said, Jesus, you're the master, I'm your student, I follow you. And the very first thing Jesus says in his sermon is so important that you understand. Jesus looks at his disciples, he says, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So there are two critical things in here. First is this phrase, poor in spirit, and second is kingdom of heaven. Do you know what it means to be poor in spirit? You know what that means? For years and years and years I read that verse, I had no idea. For a long time I thought it meant poor, financially poor. That's not what it means. It's not about how much money you have. It's something totally different. So first, poor in spirit, he says, this is the concept of abandoning any idea that you can run your own kingdom. A person who's poor in spirit knows they can't do it. They know it to the core of who they are. And they know that they are completely dependent on God. So I have no resources within me to change that person, change that situation, make that person like me, fix this problem. I don't have the resources inside of me. I am poor in my spirit. My will cannot make it happen. That's the idea. Okay, that's what a person who's poor in spirit is. Then he says this, so blessed are the poor in spirit because theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And this is the key phrase, and this tripped me up forever because I am an American Christian and we don't talk about the kingdom of heaven unless we talk about heaven. And what we talk about and what I was raised to believe is the kingdom of heaven is where I go when I die someday. Rather than understanding that Jesus isn't saying that, hey, good news. Someday when you die, good things will happen to you. It's not it. The kingdom of heaven is not only a place you go when you die, it is a present reality that you can choose to live in or you can choose not to live in. And he says the poor in spirit have access to the kingdom of heaven now. Yours is the kingdom of heaven. It's not a future reality only, it is a present reality. So, again, this is my kingdom and what it brings me. Now, it doesn't always bring me that. Sometimes things are okay. But eventually, this is what my kingdom looks like. Eventually, things stack up and things become uncontrollable, and I am full of anxiety and fear, and it's like a seasonal, it's like maybe a cycle. I don't know how long the gap is, but I regularly go through this, where it just, you know what it's like. You have a year where it's like everything that can happen happens in that year. And we have these things that stack up upon us. And here's that's my kingdom. I can live in that. The truth is, I've lived way too long in that. Many Christians never leave that. Many Christians who believe in Jesus live their whole lives this way. That's not what Jesus is offering. He said, I've come that you can have life and have it more abundantly. And what it means is the kingdom of our King is available now. It's available right now. And we can choose to live under the reign of Jesus as our King in this world now. I can reign or he can reign. And when I make this voluntary submission and surrender to his reign in my life, I get to live with him in his kingdom. And here's the New Testament promise then. Peace, power, joy, love, hope. And you read about this in the New Testament. Over and over again, these people were being persecuted. They were having their stuff confiscated. They were being imprisoned. They were being beaten for their faith. And all they write about is joy and worship services and worshiping God. Just like we would, right? Just like American Christians would if we had all of our stuff taken away because we believed in Jesus, right? We wouldn't. We're not even going to pretend like we would, but they did. Because when he is your king and you live under his rule, then both these things are available. His character inside of you, most of those things are character words, peace, joy, love, and hope. But then there's power too, where his activity is working in the world through you to do what you could never do. That's what you That's the offer. And what I want you to understand about this is this: self-sufficiency locks that door. If you have a problem come up and your first solution is you're going to solve it, then you won't enter this. Why? Because what would happen if he showed up in your life like he wants to? Who would get all the credit? Oh, we would. And we would not move into a greater level of dependency on God where we can experience his life in this world. And he loves us way too much for that. But brokenness and surrender open the door to living with him as the king in this world. This is what you have to understand. And so what does a broken person sound like? Well, they sound like this: I can't. I can't fix my spouse. Can't fix my child. I can't control this person's decisions. I can't guarantee the outcome I want. I can't make this person like me. I can't ever stop them from doing that again. Right? Now, the I can't is dangerous because I've seen it take people two ways. It can take you towards despair and hopelessness and anger at God, which is done for me, or it can take you into confidence in God, where you begin to see the full activity of God in your life. It can go either way. You need to understand that it can go two directions. So are you trying to fix something beyond the boundaries of your kingdom today? Are you relying on yourself? Or is there complete dependence on God? Or what Jesus would say, poor in spirit. I don't have the resources. Some of you know, like me, you're doing it wrong. You have a problem you cannot solve, and your confidence is not in Jesus. It's in you. What do? Well, the first thing is we confess it. First thing. My kingdom is a problem. My kingdom is probably the biggest problem I have in my life today. Is that I so confidently keep myself on that throne where I'll make the decisions. God, just watch me. Ugh. We confess it. This is what control is. This is what I'm saying to God. My kingdom come, my will be done on earth. I can't say the rest of it because it isn't done in heaven, right? So that's what I'm saying when I'm in control. That's what I've been saying to God for months and months of this year. My kingdom come, my will be done. That's disaster. We confess that to him. God, I'm so sorry that I've made it about me, not about you. Second, we got to be honest with God about all of this. And I'm not asking you to do this without being honest. Matter of fact, the only way it works is honesty. You've got to be completely honest with God. So say to him, this hurts. I'm scared. I'm upset. I really want this, but I know I can't make this happen. So you're going to be honest with him. And then release the outcome to God. I'm giving this outcome to you. I'm not in control. I'm giving it to you, God. Put it in his hands. I love what George Mueller said. George Mueller said the key to really participating with God in this world is get your heart to a place where it has no will of its own. Did you know that? Do you have a will, something you want in these situations you're dealing with? I do. And so we have to get to the point where we're saying to God, I want this, God, but I'll let it go. If you want me in this, that's all that matters. Your will be done. I'll say yes, I'll say no, your will be done. That's all that matters, is we get our heart to that condition. We're releasing that outcome to God, and then we're putting God back in first place. This is the only way this works. God is the king, we are not. Put God back, and I know, like I said, I changed some things, so put God back in first place. You gotta wrestle with this question. What do I really want more? Do you want this answer from God, or do you want God? If you want an answer from God more than you want God, it will never work. The greatest good in this world is not what God can give you. The greatest good in this world is God himself. And that's where our attitudes have to be. Is that the most important thing I can have in this world is not stuff from God, it's God. That's what Jesus meant when he would go on in Matthew 6 to say, seek first his kingdom. Not my kingdom, his, and his righteousness, and then you get everything else added as well. So this is the order. Because the truth is, my deepest need is for God. The answer may or may not come in the way I want, but God is always present. So this is what God walked me through so far this year. This is where I'm at. To get to the point where God is enough. And what I want is God, not things from God. So, God, I can honestly tell you this now. I could have said this a month ago, but God in his incredible grace has stacked and stacked and stacked and stacked in my life this year to the point where finally, on May 9th, I got to the end of my rope. So I went, the first 4 months sitting on my throne, absolutely anxious and scared and trying to control everything and failing at everything I was trying to control. Complete failure until finally May 9th came. May 9th, I was so tired of being miserable and stressed and anxious that I got out my notes, and I have a prayer journal, write down the things I'm praying about, and I wrote everything that I've shown you on this sheet of paper, and this is part 1, part 2 is next week. And as you can see, if you're close enough, I have notes all over this thing. Because ever since May 9th, when I sat down and I said, I'm done. I'm not the king. You are the king. And I get that. Your will be done, not mine. Whatever you want done, that's fine. But I'm going to release these outcomes to you. Then all of a sudden, 2 things happen, and this is critical that you understand what grace is. Grace is God's activity in your life doing what you could never do on your own. That's what grace is. God doing in your life what you could never do on your own, and the offer from God is twofold. First, he will change your character. This is what you see over and over again in the Bible. Grace and peace to you. Grace and peace be yours in abundance. Well, that peace is his. It's not your peace. It's joy. It's peace, despite circumstances. It's love. It's hope, right? And then the second thing is his activity doing in your life what you could never do on your own. This is what he does. It's Paul and Silas sitting in a jail cell, being imprisoned, whipped, beaten, chained to a wall, and worshiping God. And what does God do? Causes an earthquake and their chains fall off. They couldn't do that. And God does it. So the interesting thing that happened after May 9th, and it happened immediately, when I got to the end of myself, these 2 things are the offer. His activity changing inside of me and changing outside of me. The outside stuff started changing immediately. The next morning when I sat down to pray again, I wrote 4 things that God did in 24 hours that I could not have done any of them. 4 things. And I was like, okay, thank you. The interesting thing was the inside stuff changed slower. I'd lost hope. I had no anticipation of good. That's what hope is. And it took a little bit before he restored my hope. 1 Peter says we get a living hope. This is the offer from Jesus. But now, a month later, God has restored not just hope, but joy and peace. This is what he's offering every human being. The opportunity to have life with him now in his kingdom. Because in my kingdom, I lost hope. In his kingdom, hope restored. So a couple of things as we finish. I want you to think about this. Is God trying to control break your controlling nature. He loves you. I mean, he loves you. Think about what we would do as a parent if we had a young child that was a spoiled, rotten little brat. Right? If we loved them, would we keep giving them everything they wanted? Of course not. That's not love. Sometimes love means saying no, or not now, or you get a timeout now. Right? Because we know what's best for them in the future is this. So is God stacking in your life? And it's not because he doesn't love you. It's because he loves you so, so much that his every thought is, how can I bring them into this new life that I want to give them? Think about this. Do you feel stressed about any circumstance in your life? Anxious, afraid? These are not the fruit of the Holy Spirit. That's the fruit of our kingdom come. All of those are always a sign that you're on the throne. That's what they always are. You're trying to control something beyond the boundaries of your kingdom. You're not the king. Are you really poor in spirit? In other words, is it easy for you to say, I can't? I just can't. Or is there that wiring inside of you that's like, I'm going to fix them. I'm going to control that. I'm going to, right? Blessed are the poor in spirit. Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Start today by releasing this outcome to God. Let me have you bow your heads as we finish today. Now, some of you, this is really, really relevant because you, like me, have been trying to control an outcome you cannot control. And maybe there's even anger at God today. And this is an opportunity to release that. It's an opportunity for you to do some silent work with God and just to say, I've gotten the prayer backward, Jesus. It's not my kingdom come, my will be done. It's your kingdom come. Your will be done. So I'm going to release this outcome to you. Let it go. With your head bowed. You know, we talk so much about Jesus and this personal God. And I will never, ever, ever tell you with the right words how much he loves you. How much he is pursuing you in a love relationship. But the proof of it is what he did for us. That he would come and lay down his life for all of us on a cross. And then rise again. And extend to every human being on earth, regardless of who you are and what you've done, his unfailing love. And for some of you, maybe it's time to receive that gift today. With your head bowed, you can just say to Jesus, Jesus, I'm not going to run from your love anymore. I choose to receive your love into my life today. Please forgive me. I want to have your eternal life inside of me today. I want you to come and be my king. In Jesus' name, amen. Hey, we want to thank you for taking some time to watch this service today. We hope that you found it to be something that will really help you in your spiritual growth. If it raised questions for you that you want to ask us, you can go to our website, again, at Peniel Church Life, and you can send a message to us through our website. Or if you've made a spiritual commitment and you want us to know about it, we would love to send you some follow-up material in the mail. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us through the website. And as always, thanks again for watching.